I was lucky enough to be able to close out 2021 with a Roadbook out in the desert over by Death Valley, Nevada. The bike is my new to me, 2017 Husky FX450. So I blew my same body style FC450 up at Sonora in 2021. So this is the bike to replace that. Fortunately, all the parts will swap over between the two.
Sea legs after this.
I am still trying to dial in the suspension a bit, so this really rough section kind of highlighted my need. If I'm going to ride any faster through something like this, where it's really kind of rollery, a little unpredictable, I have to go stiffer. There was a lot of rubber on the bottom of my back fender after this, and the forks were... You're supposed to bottom them out in extreme situations. I was bottoming them out a bit if I landed into the face of one of these things. So there's just not the safety factor that I really want to have for the rally stuff. The suspension works awesome for enduro-y trail riding stuff, but the high speed out in the desert with the sharp edges is just a little bit too much for it. One of the things that I was fighting with a bit with myself was just kind of staying on top of the Roadbook and staying ahead of it. So you'll hear in the video and you'll see me look down, me kind of memorizing where my notes were, where my turns were. And you can't really ride and navigate at the same time. So I would memorize something and then I would ride, and then I would either ride not far enough and then I'd be looking down too much, or I would ride too far and then look down right when I realized I needed to turn because I saw the road. So I need to work a little bit on my mental estimation of distance, which I think is just something that comes with practice, but certainly mental focus is part of it too. That is absolutely beautiful. Rally takes you some cool places. It was sunny the first part of the day, and then we got up into the hills and it was cold and snowy. The clouds were hanging really low and cutting off the top of the hills, so continue down. No, we're not at 46.9. You can see here I'm kind of looking for the right road. I know it's around here, and then I say, oh, it's 46.9. So I know I'm close, but I need to keep going and need to get that distance estimation closer, because it's just every time you do that, it's a pretty good chunk of extra time when you're going 5 miles an hour instead of 40. You can see a lot of times I'm looking at the offshoot and then looking at the Roadbook. Right there you hear me say, oh, take the wash, and then go. I should already have in my head that the next thing, I knew it was a turn to the right, but I hadn't memorized the wash part. And then once you're in it, you can just go and ride. But having all of the right information in your head is the difference between overshooting a corner and going the wrong way, and going the right way and having a good flow the whole time and not missing a turn. then when there is a longer distance between notes, it's easy to get wrapped up in your head. So you see, I saw that offshoot and I'm like, oh, was that in the Roadbook? I don't know if I remembered that. Yeah, I just need to be a little more on top of it.
That is too cool. What are these horses around?
There were a couple donkeys out here, which was pretty cool to ride up on them and see them. They were all fuzzy and puffed up because it was about 25 degrees out. Pretty crazy views.
Donkeys.
And it started snowing and raining on me, so
Man,
it was just barely above freezing. You can kind of see through the water. There's 4 or 5 donkeys walking along the bottom of that wash.
Huh. That's so cool.
And eventually got back out into the flat again, and I was pretty motivated to keep my pace up because I was getting really cold. 25 is maybe an exaggeration, but it was not much above freezing, even once you got back down in elevation a little bit, and it was pretty windy. So I was seeing that sun off in the distance thinking, oh, I can get there, it'll be warm over there. This is probably the single fastest wash I've ever ridden in. It was a highway, pretty darn cool riding through it. Kind of hear the exhaust echoing off the side of the wash and back at you. This is the first bike I've had a steering damper on, really. I don't know that this bike really needs it, but certainly for this kind of thing where you're blasting through a wash and there's some hidden kind of bigger rocks under the gravelly surface, like that rock right there, it's just a nice extra bit of safety, because if you do ping off of something, it's going to shift the bike over, but it's not going to twist the bars at the same time. So it's turned down all the way, but the high-speed damping on it's still on, so it's pretty helpful. I didn't even really feel like I needed it on riding in the sand dunes here. This is Big Dune, I think is what it's called, near Amargosa, I think, Amargosa, Nevada. I have a bit of a mental block when it comes to cresting the dunes. There's a critical slope of every material when you pile it up like this, and the backside of a dune is never that steep, but because you're transitioning from steep up to steep down, my brain is just like, oh, you have to creep over the top, and then I get stuck. That was intentional, but there were many times out here that I either had to turn around and try again because I slowed down too much, or I got stuck like a foot short of the top.
Yep. Oh. That is a long way down.
So the old bike, I was having some issues with pinging doing this stuff. Granted, it was really cold out here, but it seems like what fixed it is just the in-tank fuel filter. I think the pump just couldn't flow enough through that kind of half-plugged up filter I had in there, which I guess means I need to start changing those every 20, 30 hours, because I think that one had 40 or 50 hours on it, and that's, I guess, just too much for the in-tank pump. I do need to work on my turning in the sand, too. I tried to make that turn, and I didn't have the bike turned down far enough, like leaned to the low side. And when I got on the throttle to spin the back end around, instead of sliding out to the outside of the turn, it slid down the hill, and I had to stop. So again, there's just a lot of this practice of stuff that I don't get in Indiana. That, you know, cresting the top of the dune, that the backside face is always really soft because it's where the sand is blowing over, and the top kind of foot or two as you get closer to the edge of the dune is also really soft. So I rode around in this little pocket of dunes for probably an hour and a half, just practicing that transition of back and forth and cresting at different angles and trying to get my speed up, because at Sonora Rally this was something that gave me a lot of trouble, when really it shouldn't. I just need to go a little bit faster, and when you crest the dune, you lean to the low side, because if you lean up the hill, the bike's going to slide sideways and put you down. So great to practice and great way to start off the new year.